All right, what's going on, guys? It's Simple Sports back again with another episode, and today I'm going to be talking about the NFL, of course. Two things I want to talk about. One, I want to give a preview of tonight's game, Titans and Colts. This video will probably be up either during the game or after the game, just because of how long it takes to upload and how late I'm recording. But I'm recording before the game, so whatever. Going to give a little preview of that game, very short, and then I want to talk about the NFL. And my topic as a whole, I guess, and my topic for that is three things that we know so far through 6 weeks, minus tonight's game. Three things that we know about the NFL as a whole. So here we go. First things first is tonight's game. And let me tell you, as a Titans fan, I put up a video recently, my last video, about the Titans and why I was really disappointed in their last effort. Obviously, they got beaten by the Dolphins, who somehow beat the Falcons yesterday, which is part of what I want to talk about later, but we'll get to that. And it was a disgusting performance offensively and defensively. They played fine, but at the same time, it was partly because the Dolphins played so bad. So I really don't know. I don't know what to make of this team right now. And it's hard to really see what other people say about them or what other people, like professionals, think about them, because they are probably, and I don't think this is an exaggeration. I think they are the most the most unpopular, or I guess untalked about, if that's a word, untalked, not talked about, whatever, NFL team that I've ever seen. Every team has, even going into the season, like, they were not really talked about. The only thing was there was a couple people who sort of said they might have a really good year, but that was really, and it was left at that. Like, no one, even the Browns, get talked about more, and it's mostly because of their dysfunction. I'm trying to think of other teams that aren't really that popular, I guess, by the mainstream media or like all these sports talk shows and debate shows. Maybe a team like, I don't know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or like the Jacksonville Jaguars. But even they are talked about more than the Titans because of how bad they have been over the recent years. So it's pretty interesting. But anyway, let me talk about tonight's game. So first of all, Mariota is supposedly playing tonight. Thank God, because we need that. Our team looks anemic without him, and that's being polite. And here's the thing. We have a chance to win another game in the division. Now, we've lost one to the Texans. We did beat the Jags, and we gave another early one to the Colts. And that's usually how the Titans schedule plays out. Usually they play the first round early in the year and then the second round later in the year. I know a lot of teams kind of clump them all together. I think the Cowboys go, like, if I'm not mistaken, they go like Eagles, Redskins, Giants, like they clumped them all together. We kind of spread ours out, usually early in the season and then late in the season. So this would be nice to get A, back to 500, and B, to get another game up in the division, because the reality is they're only a game out, okay? And they get to play the Texans again, so that would be a chance for them to sort of seal it up if they can win tonight, which I think, given the team they're playing, who's kind of in disarray of their own, they should do okay tonight. But I will say they're probably the most inconsistent team I think I've ever seen, because I think about last year, right? And last year, they beat the Packers and the Broncos last year, and I was like, wow, because at that point in the season, it was about the same time, week 5, week 6, week 7, and they were kind of hanging around 500, and I'm like, wow, okay, they look okay, but they need a signature win. And then they went out and beat the Packers first, I think, and then they turned around and beat the Broncos. And not necessarily that those teams are like super talented, like, well, they are super talented, but not that they are like, they're not so dominant where you think it's impossible to win, but they do have really good defenses for the Broncos and a really good offense for the Packers, or at least a really good quarterback. So I was interested to see how they would fare against those teams. And so let's see. Yeah, so they beat the they beat the Packers 47-25. Then it was they lost to the Colts somehow. Then they beat the Bears, and then they beat the Broncos 13-10. And it was on the road, I believe. No, it was not on the road. It was at home. And then they turn around and beat the Chiefs as well in Kansas City, which was another big win. And then they turn around. So they beat the Packers, lose to the Colts, beat the Bears, beat the Broncos, beat the Chiefs, and then turn around and lose to the Jags 38-17. So they're super inconsistent. This year they come out and they lose to the Raiders, which, I don't think they should have lost, but, it is what it is. They lost the game. And then they come out, they smack the Jags, they beat the Seahawks, which I was like, okay, this year is officially underway now because they went 1-1, they're 500, they get the big game at home versus the Seahawks, and they win pretty handily. Actually, the score wasn't as close as the final score, so I was pretty excited. And then they come out and they lose by 40 to the Texans, and then they turn around and lose to the Dolphins. So here's their upcoming schedule. That's currently 2-3. They get the Colts, Browns, Ravens, Bengals. Excuse me, let me start over. They get the Colts at home, on the road to the Browns, Bengals and Ravens at home, at Steelers, at the Colts, and then they get the Texans again. Realistically, they could go 3-3, 4, 5, 6, 7-3 by the time, 8-3 by the time they face the Texans again. The Colts obviously is a winnable game, especially at home. At Cleveland is obviously a winnable game. The Ravens seem to be in disarray. Bengals, they are the Bengals. Like, they just kind of are there every year. Steelers seem to be in disarray and dysfunction, but at the same time, they had a big win yesterday, although I don't buy the Chiefs, so I don't really know how much I buy that win. And the Colts, again, another winnable game, and then they get the Texans. So realistically, it's not like I'm doing this as a fan. Realistically, they could go into that Texans game 8-3, which would be nice because then they round out the season with the Cardinals, 49ers, Rams, and Jags. So I'm not panicking on the season. I was just really disappointed about that game. So we'll see how it goes tonight. Hopefully Mariota is back and plays well. And I actually think they need to make a big win tonight. Not just a close game, even though it's a divisional rival. But I don't want tonight's game to be close, a field goal with seconds running off the clock or something like that. Like, if they win by a touchdown, maybe 10 points, I'll be confident enough going forward. So we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to the game tonight. I think this is our first Monday night game since 2014. So this isn't a thing that happens for us. So I'm pretty excited to kind of have the spotlight on us. It would be nice in turn then to have a big win on Monday Night Football at home against a divisional rival. So we'll see how it goes. Now, I want to talk about the NFL as a whole and 3 things that I've learned that I think I know for sure over the course of this week, over the course of this season thus far, through 6 games, through 6 weeks anyway, with a couple of people a tad bit behind, and obviously the game tonight. So, recap yesterday. First of all, not a lot of good games, in my opinion. Some of them, they were close games, but they just weren't good. Like, they weren't really watchable games. Like, they were just kind of, somewhat entertaining. I did watch the Packers-Vikings game up until Rodgers got hurt. I watched for about another quarter after that, and I just couldn't stomach it anymore. I watched the Falcons-Dolphins, the Pats-Jets, and Steelers and Chiefs. And all of them were, like I said, they were decent games, nothing spectacular. The one thing that was weird, and this is going to get into what my 3 things are. So the first thing I want to talk about is all of the young quarterbacks that have come through the league this year. And what I've noticed is over the past couple of years, we seem to be getting things right with quarterbacks. And I was listening to Colin Cowherd talk about this a couple of days ago. Think about all the young quarterbacks that we have. And in some of even the young quote-unquote veterans, right? So if you just go down the list of teams, you have the Eagles, you have Carson Wentz. Panthers, you got Cam Newton, who, again, he's what I would qualify as a young veteran. Now, I don't think he's going to play another 10 years. Okay, but he's a younger, like he's not in his late 30s or mid 30s even. He's a younger veteran, so and he's a solid quarterback. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the league or even in the division, but he's a very solid quarterback by any imagination. He definitely is. Trubisky has looked okay in spots. We have yet to see him play over a stretch of a couple of games, but we've seen him in the preseason and in a couple spots. He's looked pretty good. I like him. He can definitely throw the ball. He made a couple of throws yesterday, especially the one touchdown he threw on the run. Like, that's just a hard throw to make. He tried to make a similar throw the week before, actually, but it almost – actually, no, that one was a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was one that got picked off, though. Then you look at the Redskins and 49ers. Kirk Cousins is a decent quarterback. He's not great. 49ers are still searching for theirs. I'm not even going to talk about the Dolphins. The Falcons, Matt Ryan is okay. He's not great. But then you get to, obviously, you had the Patriots with Tom Brady. Obviously, he's the greatest of all time, in my opinion. The Jets are still searching. Then you have Jared Goff. Looks really, really good. Blake Bortles, man, whatever. Ben Roethlisberger is trying to decide if he even wants to play or not. Alex Smith, decent quarterback, not great. And then their backup is Mahomes, who I think is going to be phenomenal, but we've yet to see him play, so we'll see how that shakes up. The Packers have Aaron Rodgers, who went down yesterday, unfortunately. Even though I don't like him, I don't want to see anyone get hurt. But Aaron Rodgers obviously is great, and he's still fairly young. Matt Stafford just signed a big contract. He's still fairly young. Drew Brees is pretty awesome. I feel bad for Drew Brees, although they put up 52 on the Lions yesterday, and then they almost blew the game somehow. You would think if you scored 38 points, you'd probably win, but they lost to the Saints, so that's pretty wild. I skipped the Vikings, but they have Teddy Bridgewater, who went down with a big knee injury. We never saw him amount to what we think he could be, so we're still kind of waiting on that one, but he looks like a really solid quarterback. The Browns, I'm going to talk about them in a second. Texans, Deshaun Watson looks really good. I'm not a Clemson fan, but I respect talent when I see it, and he's not the typical pocket passer you would think. He seems to be inaccurate at times, but he's what we call playmaker. He is a playmaker. He is a threat to score, and yeah, he's a solid quarterback. It sucks that he's in our division and he's young. So if he does pan out to be great, that sucks for us because we're going to have to deal with him for a long time. The Bucs have Jameis Winston. Cardinals are probably about to start searching for a quarterback. I'm sure they already have with Carson Palmer, although he's a serviceable quarterback to say the least. But point being, he doesn't have 10 years left. Chargers in the same boat. Phillip Rivers is awesome, but it's about time to start looking for the successor. Derek Carr looks great, although I don't think he's fully healthy. And the Raiders seem to be in a little turmoil right now. And then obviously you have Eli Manning and Trevor Siemian with the Giants and Broncos. Eli, I think people underestimate or underrate Eli a little bit because a lot of people don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't know if I would go to elite, but he, to me, is definitely on that second tier with like the Big Bens and the Drew Breeses. Maybe not quite that high. He's like at the bottom of that list, if that makes any sense. That's how I view it. I think Eli is definitely underrated. Listen, you don't win 2 Super Bowls by accident. Now, I know he had a great defense and they made a couple of, lucky plays, but still, you don't win by accident, okay? If you look back at most Super Bowls or in most like NBA championships or most any professional championship, especially during the playoffs, there's usually some sort of luck that is involved. It's just the way it is. Tom Brady doesn't win that Super Bowl. Forget the comeback. If Julian Edelman doesn't make that catch, he doesn't win. If Matt Ryan doesn't fumble that ball, they don't win. If Welker makes the catch in that Super Bowl against the Giants, they win another one. And if Tyree doesn't make the catch, they win another one. The Seahawks Super Bowl against the Pats. If Kearse doesn't make that catch down the sideline, we're not even talking about the last play because it would have never happened. So there's a lot of luck that is involved. So luck doesn't play into it for me. You have to have a little bit of luck, okay? And so for that reason, I think Eli is an elite quarterback. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I know a lot of people don't, but that's just me. So that's the first thing we know. Bottom line is a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of young quarterbacks, up-and-coming quarterbacks that look really good. And I forgot about Dak Prescott, who's another solid young quarterback So think about it. You have Carson Wentz. I'm going to go down the list. Carson Wentz, Trubisky. Let's see. Jared Goff, Pat Mahomes, Andrew Luck. I want to count this. Let me start over. Wentz, Trubisky, Jared Goff, Mahomes, Andrew Luck, Mariota, Teddy Bridgewater, Deshaun Watson, and Derek Carr, and Trevor Siemian. I'll throw him in there. He looks okay. That's 10 roughly teams that have decent to above average, at least average to above average quarterbacks. You don't really see that, especially not at one time. Because if you look at the other teams, like the 49ers, besides Kaepernick, haven't really had a good quarterback in a long time. The Panthers, aside from Cam Newton, it's been a while. The Ravens, I don't even know their last good quarterback. The Redskins, the Dolphins, the Falcons, well, they had Vic, obviously, but so it's really nice to see all of these young quarterbacks sort of up and coming. It's really nice to see. Second thing I want to talk about is the injuries. And I don't know really. I don't know how you would fix it, because there's no fixing it. If you're going to get hurt, you get hurt. Like, it's usually a misfortunate event that leads you to being hurt. No one's really out there, at least I like to believe, that no one's out there purposely hurting players. Obviously, I would imagine that there's a couple out there who are definitely a little on the dirty side. But I like to believe that no one is out there intentionally hurting players. And what we've seen is, from the injuries, is some of these teams really don't have their stuff together, if you know what I mean. The Packers lose Aaron Rodgers, and obviously, listen, if you have a quarterback who's good enough to start behind Aaron Rodgers, then he probably wouldn't be your backup. You trade him for, and not necessarily, but I'm just saying, like, if you were to pick up a guy, now Brent Hundley has been there for a while, so it's sort of a bad example, but my point is, Brent Hundley isn't, I don't think, capable of coming into the game and winning it for you. I think of a backup quarterback as someone who cannot lose the game that's already at hand. If you're a backup quarterback and you can go out, and let's say you have a quarterback that's out, for example, Mariota, supposedly was going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. So let's say he was out 4 weeks. Do you believe Matt Castle can go in and win, say, 2 of those games? Answer is no. Okay? And you start to look at some of these other quarterbacks as the backups, and half of them you don't know, and the other half you question whether or not they can win you a game. Like, I'm going down the list, and some of them I'm like, I don't even know who their backup is. And I think the only one, off the top of my head at least, that I think could come in and win a game would be Garoppolo in New England. I look at the rest of these teams, and I don't see it. And so my point is, you see these major injuries in football, especially in the NFL, and what happens is they will derail an entire team's season. Peyton Manning goes down, the Colts are a disaster. Now, I'm not saying that they needed to be, and it was probably for the best because they went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. Okay, but my point is, let's suppose that, the draft and draft positioning and all this stuff wasn't a thing, and it was just about winning games. And Peyton Manning goes out, and you're stuck with whoever their backup was at the time. I don't even remember. Like, it's like if someone of that talent level goes down, if a starter goes down in the NFL, especially at a skill position, or like a left tackle. So I guess you can really say anyone, honestly. Anyone that's a starter, let's just throw it out there. They derail teams. Think about all the teams that have major injuries right now. The only one that isn't really derailed off the top of my head is the Texans. And granted, they were only without Watt for yesterday, but even yesterday they looked fine. Now they did play the Browns, so we'll see how it goes against some better competition. But the Giants lose Odell, you lose Brandon Marshall, and although they were looking terrible to start with, like without those two guys, now there's no prayer. And of course, then they go out and beat the Broncos, which I'll get to that in my next bit. Same thing with the Patriots. Hightower goes down in that game against the Chiefs, and all hell broke loose. I mean, you can go on and on. The Packers yesterday against the Vikings lost by 13 without Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers with that team, they probably win that game. My guess would be they win that game. I'm pretty confident in saying that they will win that game. David Johnson goes down for the Cardinals, and all of a sudden they look like, they look terrible, and then they go sign Adrian Peterson or they trade for him, and seems to at least be able to tread water for a little while. The Cowboys, albeit not the injury, but Zeke is going to be gone for 6 games at some point, whether it's this year or next year. And they look bad with him. Now, I shouldn't say they look bad. They don't look very good without him, with him. They don't look like a Super Bowl contender with him. Last year, Johnson from the Eagles went down, and, it kind of derailed them. Cam Newton goes down. That would completely derail the Panthers. You look at the Titans. Mariota goes down, albeit they were – and that's another thing. Like, they were only down 7 to the Texans. Then Mariota goes out, and they ended up losing by 40 points. And obviously he's not too – he can't stop the defense. But, I don't think that game gets as out of hand as it did if Mariota doesn't go down. So, injuries – and it's not necessarily new. It's just I never really realized the impact, especially on watchability, because – I watch the Giants every week. I want to see Odell. I watch the Cowboys. I watch the Packers. I watch all of these teams, and then I see these people on the field, and I'm like, I don't really know who they are. And you lose that connection, and so it kind of makes it uninteresting to watch. And the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that at the end of the day, we really don't know a thing about the NFL this year. We've seen if you would have asked me before the season to bet money that the Giants would start 0-5, I would absolutely have bet on that. Or if you would have told me that the Chiefs will start 5-0, there's no way the Chiefs are starting 5-0. Or the Steelers would be a little out of whack. I'm not buying that. The Patriots defense would be this bad, not buying it. The Titans would be this inconsistent. I probably would buy that. Or that Deshaun Watson would come out and look like an MVP to start the year, or that Kareem Hunt was going to be an all-star, or none of these things I would have guessed. But this year has been so bizarre. For example, yesterday, the 0-5 Giants, they lose their best player and what should have been their second best receiver in Brandon Marshall and Odell Beckham. And then they go out and beat the Broncos, who have arguably the best defense in the league. Or the Titans go out and they beat the Seahawks. Again, that score wasn't as close as it indicated. And then they turn around and lose by 40 to the in-division rival. It's been such a bizarre year. And I'm not necessarily changing any of my picks, at least not yet. I think I'll give it to about week 8 before I make any amendments, if there are going to be any. But this has been a bizarre year so far. But it's been fun. A lot of boring games, but a lot of really, really good games. So we'll see how it plays out. So I'll probably do another video tomorrow after the Titans game and sort of do a recap of the entire week as a whole. But that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So you guys take care. I will see you in the next episode. Peace.